Welcome back, everybody. This is Peter Schiff here on Wednesday morning at SchiffRadio.com. And the dollar is losing some overnight strength. It now seems to have turned negative against most currencies. Initially, the dollar gained some strength over protests in Greece and a no confidence vote that was survived, meaning that the Greek government, the no confidence vote did not pass, but regardless, that did not, solve any of these problems. So there were protests, and the dollar originally gained some value, but it is losing that value back. Gold's up again today, about $6. Silver up about 20 cents. The markets are overall flat. The Federal Reserve is supposed to come out today with its announcement on rates. Of course, rates are not going to be increased. The argument is going to be over the language of their statement. How long is the Fed going to maintain zero interest rates? And is there going to be any hints that there will be a QE3? Now, I don't believe the Fed is going to acknowledge, as I said, that there will be a QE3, but there will be a QE3. I don't care what they call it. They are going to do it. They might not immediately start it at the day that QE2 ends, but there won't be a big lag. It'll happen relatively quickly. There's an article that I'm reading in Forbes by Michael Polero, in which he really goes into how much of the treasuries the Fed has been buying. And if you go back from January or even December of 2010, 100% of all the bonds the federal government has sold have been bought by the Federal Reserve. In fact, the Federal Reserve is actually buying more bonds than the government is selling, particularly in the last couple of months as the Treasury is trying to stay within the national debt limit. It is, doing some accounting tricks. But the Federal Reserve is buying all the bonds and then some that the Treasury is selling. How can the Federal Reserve step away from the market and not have a big increase in rates? After all, who is going to buy these bonds if not the Fed? Now, one way that the buying might come is if we get an implosion in the stock market again and a collapse in the economy, and we get this reflexive flight into what is perceived to be quality. But that would only be temporary until the people, kind of like Wile E. Coyote, until they, look down and realize that they're not standing on firm ground anymore. Then they fall. So there's only going to be so much of a move of a fear bid in the Treasury market. So he postulates that there's just no way to take the Fed out of the market, and I agree. And even if the Fed simply stays in the market to roll over its maturing securities, it doesn't completely step away, that still leaves a huge void that is going to have to be filled. Now, apparently, too, later on today, Ben Bernanke is going to be holding another press conference, and that should be very interesting to watch. Again, he did that last time. So I will be watching, and I will be commenting on that press conference during tomorrow's show. So I'm sure I'll have a very interesting take on Ben Bernanke's comments. Meanwhile, overnight, looking at the gains in the Chinese yuan, the RMB, it's got moved to its strongest level, and I think since 91 or something like that. The yuan continues to strengthen, albeit at a slower pace, but it is going up. More signs that prices are going to be rising here in the U.S. as the higher yuan factors into prices that the Chinese sell Americans. Also looking on the inflation front, reading a story that average domestic airfares are up 10% now this year. Gee, even with a slow economy, airfares are still rising. How is that happening? I think one of the biggest casualties of inflation is the U.S. Post Office. I'm reading an article today from the Post Office. The Post Office needs to suspend making payments to its employees' pension fund because it is broke. The Post Office is bleeding red ink right now, and Congress has not given them permission to raise the price of a postage stamp. I wonder why. They want to maintain the illusion that there's no inflation, and obviously a big increase in the price of a stamp would shine a big light on that inflation, so they're not letting the post office raise the price of a stamp. Instead, the post office is hemorrhaging red ink because it's losing money by delivering the mail. Now, of course, part of that has to do with the inefficiencies that come from a government-run enterprise. But, the post office is losing money despite the fact that it's selling these forever stamps. And I talked about this on this show before, and I wrote an article about it on my website. But the post office is selling forever stamps, meaning that you buy this stamp and you can use it forever to mail a letter. No matter how high the price of a letter goes, you can always take that stamp that you buy today and use it to pay for a cost of a stamp, even if that cost has doubled or tripled. And so what I think is happening is people are hoarding these forever stamps. People are going to the post office and buying a bunch of these stamps as an investment, knowing that they'll be able to use them in the future. And certainly, if you put your money in the bank, you get 0% interest. So you get 0% interest on your stamps, but it's a hedge against inflation because if the price of stamps goes up by 10% or 20% or 100%, you can use these stamps. It's a fantastic investment. So people are buying them. But what does that mean? That means the post office is taking in a bunch of money now and not having to deliver any mail. Yet despite this, it's still losing a bunch of money. Imagine what's going to happen years from now when the post office is finally given permission to jack up the price of a stamp. The post office is going to raise stamp prices, and guess what? No one's going to buy any stamps. They're just going to pull out their forever stamps and use those, which means the post office is going to have to deliver all this mail and collect no money because they already collected it and spent it years earlier, which means the post office is going to implode and it's going to require a massive taxpayer bailout to keep the post office in business. I'm surprised, too, that this isn't kind of a bigger story. One of the things the post office wants to do now, because they can't raise the price of a stamp, is they're asking Congress for permission to eliminate Saturday mail delivery so that they only deliver mail Monday through Friday. Way back when you could mail a letter for 2 cents, that's what a stamp used to cost, 2 cents. Well, back then, not only did they have Saturday mail delivery, but on the weekdays, they had 2 deliveries a day. They had the morning mail and they had the afternoon mail. Can you imagine that? The post office came twice a day. In fact, if you ever watch an old movie, you'll hear reference to this. They'll say, I wanted to go out in the morning mail. What came in the afternoon mail? There were 2 deliveries a day. And now we've only got 1, and now they want to get rid of Saturday. But that is another example of how the post office has diminished the quality of the services that it provides while increasing the price. And for anybody, I had a guest on my show not too long ago that was trying to argue how efficient the government was, and they were using Medicaid as an example. Look at the post office. If they can't even do something as simple as deliver the mail without dramatically increasing the price and reducing the quality of the service, if they can't do something so simple, how are they going to do something as complicated as medical care? Speaking of Medicare, I'm reading an article now that based on Obamacare, that millions of middle-class people are now going to qualify for Medicaid, which is meant for poor people. And apparently it's something in here in the health care bill that nobody really knew about, but now they're finding out about it. Remember, we play on this show Nancy Pelosi. She said, you got to pass the bill to find out what's in it. Well, we passed the bill, and now we found out that this thing is in it. And even the congressmen are saying, oh, my God, this is terrible. How are we going to undo this? Maybe it would have been good to read the bill before you voted for it. Then you would have known it was in there, and you could have taken it out or not passed it. Anyway, don't go away. We got more of the Peter Schiff Show coming up after this break on SchiffRadio.com.